Hey, I've got Ken McRae with me today. He is a family law practitioner in Leawood, Kansas. A good buddy of mine. I've known Ken for several years. Ken, thanks so much for joining me today.
Absolutely, Tim. Good to see you.
You bet. Hey, I'm curious. We're all trying to adapt to this new way of life, this stay-at-home way of life. And I'm curious. You've got law practice, primarily family law. First, just start there. Why don't you tell us about what your practice focus is, please?
Family law, divorce, custody, child support, that's the bulk of my practice, most of what I do. And so that's obviously a practice where typically we would have a lot of personal interaction and contact either in person with the client or at the courthouse. And that's one of those things we're going to have to try and navigate here over the next few weeks or months, hopefully not months, but figure out how to do this in a different kind of way.
Yeah, I know that, we've talked before. I know you'd already taken some steps prior to the stay-at-home order. How had this, COVID-19 issue impacted your practice up to this point prior to the stay-at-home order?
Yeah, I honestly hadn't seen a ton of impact. I'd reached out to anybody who I had scheduled a meeting with and offered them the opportunity to do it by video or by phone, but most people wanted to still meet in person. One of the big things is if I need them to sign some paperwork, figuring out how do we do that, especially if it's something that I need to have notarized by a notary public. Haven't figured out the logistics of how we're going to do that if we can't go see people in person. So last week, most people were still wanting to come in and meet in person, but I did make some adaptations to add some video technology so I could have more of these video meetings if that was the way it was going to go. The one thing I really noticed was the Kansas courts, starting last week, were really kind of proactive on this. And so I was getting notifications that anything that was not considered an emergency hearing, they weren't going to have in person. So I have a couple of court appearances scheduled for next week. I got notification that they were going to, one of them, they said if it's not contested at all, just submit paperwork. We don't want anyone to come. The other one, they initially converted it to a telephone only conference. And then I got notification late Friday night that they're not even going to do a phone conference. It's just going to get rescheduled at a later date. So what the courts are doing is if you've got an emergency, if there was a need for protection from abuse order because of domestic violence or something like that, they're still open and operational. They would still hold those hearings. But if it's not an emergency, they're not open for business. And so everything is just going to be done. You can still file paperwork, you can still submit everything, but they're not going to hold any hearings.
So if I'm understanding what you're saying, it sounds like much of the court activity is still going to go on. Folks are still going to be able to take care of their legal matters, but they're going to have to find a new way to do that. They're going to have to do it through electronic submissions, that sort of thing. Is that what you're understanding?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So in a divorce case, since that's what I spend most of my time doing, if the parties reached a settlement agreement, we did it by, video conference or email exchange or whatever, and everyone got on the same page, we all signed the documents, we could electronically file those. The judge is likely going to sign them electronically and be done. So we wouldn't need to go to the courthouse. I think they would just eliminate any need to go there just to prove everything by paperwork. On the other hand, if you have a case where we don't reach an agreement, and so normally we would go in for some sort of trial or hearing, I think that's just going to get continued out until we're past this kind of wave and we have another sense of what we're going to do. So it's going to be a delay on a lot of those things. But if it's a situation where you can come to an agreement, I think it'll feel very much the same as it has been in the past. Might just eliminate a trip to the courthouse, but otherwise it'll seem similar.
Have you gotten any guidance from the courts at this point as to whether or not some of those issues, you talked about signing wills where you need a notary, that sort of thing. Have you received any guidance at this point from the courts that they may waive those sort of requirements on a temporary basis and come up with some other mechanism?
I haven't seen that, and they may have sent something. They've sent. There's been a lot of listserv type communications, and I haven't made it all the way through all of those. I've really been checking to see what they're doing on hearings that I've had scheduled coming up. So that's been my first focus. They may have given us some guidance on that, and I just haven't seen it. I think some of that may be stuff that they're trying to figure out as we go. A lot of this is kind of a work in progress for everyone. Obviously, no one's been through anything like this, and they're trying to figure out what steps are appropriate.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, this is a brand new world for all of us. So, in terms of your practice, your law practice, you're pretty much full steam ahead. You're just kind of adjusting how you're doing business. Is that the deal?
Yeah, for the time being, I've got all my files at home, got my computer and everything, and so I've got the obviously the ability to do video conferences, and so I'll still be meeting with clients by video, doing things that way, email, phone, all that stuff will be the same. It's just I'll be sitting in a desk at a different location, but I'm sure that the further this goes on, the more adjustments we're going to have to make and find new ways to do it. It really is going to be different. I mean, so much anytime you're in a personal service business, so much of what you do is based on that interaction, getting to know people, and this is good. There's video communication, but it's certainly different, and we're going to have to get used to doing things in a different kind of way.
Sounds good. Hey, I know this isn't strictly speaking your area of expertise, but you are a lawyer. At least you've told me so, and I appreciate that. So any advice to folks in terms of, we're all quarantined, basically quarantined in our homes, stay-at-home orders at this point. I think that always brings out, hopefully, sometimes the best in people. Sometimes, though, we've seen it brings out the worst in people. Are there any safety, any precautions that you'd recommend to folks that will help them steer clear of phishing scams, of that sort of activity?
Yeah, I would say it's probably a lot of the same things you've heard before. Just I would be suspicious of any email if it's not coming from someone that you expect. Um, don't open any attachments unless you know the sender and you were expecting them to send you an attachment. Uh, One thing that happens, and I've seen this, you'll get an email that claims it's from your credit card company saying, "Hey, your account's frozen. Click on this link to unfreeze it or whatever." Make sure you're hovering your finger over that email address, or whatever. A lot of times they'll have it so it looks like it says it's from Visa, but then you see the email address is just a string of characters from Ymail or Gmail or something, and that's not a legitimate one. Those are pretty easy to ferret out. I would say just be suspicious of everything, honestly, unless you were expecting it and you can tell that it's from the right person. And then the other big thing is it's pretty unlikely that any of the big government agencies are going to be reaching out to you specifically to offer you something or do something. Anytime if you get a email that says, "Hey, you're eligible for this grant, click here," I would what's the government agency that's sending it to you? Go to their website and see, is this legit? Are they actually doing this sort of thing, or is that completely fictional and people are just trying to commit some identity theft?
Sounds good. Sounds good. I appreciate that. Yeah. So, hey, so I'll put up your contact info. So, if I understand, you're open for business, regular business hours. Folks can reach out to you either by your phone number, email, website. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if somebody does need help and wants to schedule an initial consultation, we can set up one of these video chats and do it that way or do it by phone. And we'll are all in this together. We're all gonna have to make the best of a difficult and challenging situation. But I'm like you. I think it's gonna bring out the best in people more often than not. So
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good. Well, hey, thanks so much, Ken. I really appreciate it.
absolutely.
Talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right. Thanks.